Oh, we got some fun today. Oh, yes. What we got going on today? Well, we want to check up with the Zohan. Yeah, I know that's not his name. I don't care. He doesn't deserve it. He's a commie. Commies aren't people. We're going to check on the SCOTUS rulings. SCOTUS likes to do a bunch of decisions, sit on them for a little while, and then release them all at once. And then we're going to check in with Kitty. That's right. My brother Badger. So he pointed out something that we were talking about over the weekend I want to get into that's poignant to one of the stories I brought up today. So let's dive in and look at just how dumb DEI is, shall we? At the highest level. How does that socialism taste, Zohan? So Zohan decided to do an interview. It didn't go too well for him. He is a very dastardly slick willy. He's really good at weaving, ducking, dodging the point. But he did wind up getting a few blows to the dome. And let's look at those specifically. Previously, we noted he refuses to condemn global Intifada. That came up again. He would refuse to condemn the phrase global Intifada. For those who do not know what that means essentially the destruction of Israel. Global Intifada has been a recent chant where essentially Muslims, extreme Muslims, are demanding that a global intifada begin and Jews be attacked throughout the globe. So that means even Jews here in the U.S. be attacked. Yep, he won't condemn that. He refuses again to condemn Sharia law because he's a Muslim. Love those honor killings, don't ya? Wants to tax just whitey. Yeah, that didn't go over too well for him. He tried to explain that it wasn't racial to target white neighborhoods for taxation, that they just happen to be white, but it's to tax whitey, because that's what he likes to do. Unable to get mainstream Dem endorsement. So this is hilarious. Hakeem Jeffries would not touch this dude. And that is funny because Democrats are socialist. They're socialist light, and they are headed that way. And again, Zohan is a critical juncture in the Democratic Party. If they endorse him and they go along with him, like some of them have been doing, that is showing where the party literally is. The masking's coming off of the Democratic Party. Again, if you are a Democrat and you still have your soul, you're a liberal, get out of the Democratic Party. It is satanic. It is evil. Get out. The other option is that they eradicate Zohan and oust him from the party, which I do not see that happening because that would go against all their critical theory doctrine. So they're in a catch-22. Also, he doesn't think billionaires should exist, which is fine for him because guess what? As soon as he implements those taxes, the billionaires won't exist anymore in New York. They'll leave and they'll create a huge deficit as we went into in a prior stream. And he now has Trump's attention. Trump, as a lot of people forget, has hotels in New York. He's lived in New York for a number of times. He's done movie appearances in New York. He knows a lot of people in New York. And you've got to believe that they have his ear, and now Zohan has Trump's attention. And Trump has already warned Zohan he needs to be careful how where he treads and how he treads in New York. Because there is an old communist act that was implemented, I believe, in the 1950s, 1960s during the Red Scare. And part of that is that if you become a U.S. citizen, and in the first 5 years of you becoming a U.S. citizen, you promote socialist communist propaganda or have ties to or affiliations to communism, you can be deported. Uh-oh. Yep. People have been digging into Zohan's past, and it looks like in the last few years of him becoming a citizen, he's been in the U.S. and a citizen 7 years now, but in the first 3 years that he was a citizen, he promoted communist propaganda. So we'll see how it goes. Pulitzer winning Washington Post journalist busted for child pedo stuff. Yep. So again, just goes to show you that the cream of the crop, the elitist, the journos, I wonder why they're doing this sort of stuff. So 11 videos of child sex abuse was found on his work laptop. You got to wonder if he was willing to put that on his work laptop. What did he have? Who knows? Because apparently they found fractured pieces of a hard drive in his hallway. He must have heard them knocking, ripped it out, and started trying to destroy that. That's scary. That is some legit scary. But the great news is that this PDFer, when he gets in the big house, he's going to have no place to hide. Yep, it's wood chipper time in the big house. He worked for WAPO for 18 years. And what's interesting is that the affidavit goes back where he had multiple eGold accounts in 2005 and 2006. So this person, eGold, was a digital payment service that ceased operations as the feds accused the company in 2007 for laundering money for PDFers. So this man has been doing this or known about doing this all the way back in 2007, and we're just now beginning to get justice for these children. That's insane. And it goes to beg the question, why is it taking so long? Well, maybe it's because the FBI is finally getting their behind in gear. Biden, me and Brother Badger were talking about this. We're conversing about how many of the top 10 were actually taken off the FBI list. Biden only got 3 off in his entire term. Trump has now gotten 3 off, and in his first, I think it was less than 6 months, I think he got 3 off by May of this year. So technically, he hadn't gotten off in June. So he's gotten 3 off in the first 6 months, and I expect Patel to get some more numbers off of that top 10. I want to see more of these PDFers in wood chippers pronto, because frankly, they're going to get more justice in the big house after the real legit criminals go after them and they realize that they're a chomo. Once again, Trump showing who's your daddy. So the Canadians thought that they were the boss for some reason. That itty bitty country to our north, that's our hat. They decided that they were going to put a 3% tax on all of our digital services companies. So anybody that utilizes AWS, that is doing Microsoft services for 365, anything of that nature, we're going to get a 3% tax on their revenue. That's insane. So if you don't make any money that year, you still have to pay the 3% tax. 3% tax on revenue, not net. So after you deduct expenses and everything else, then finally you get taxed on that amount. That's generally how that is supposed to kind of work out for the most part. But that's not how the Canadians saw it. The Canadians saw it as free money because guess who was doing it previously? The European Union. Yep, they thought they could copy that playbook. But what they realized is that not only is Europe our little brother, but they are the little brother's second removed cousin of the little brother. That's right. They're the redheaded stepchild who could beat with a stick. So within 24 hours, they folded. That's right. Trump told them that they've got 7 days while he thinks up some of the worst things they could possibly do to Canada, besides making them the 51st state, which wouldn't be a bad thing, but it would be to a lot of those blue-haired liberals up in Canada, and decided that they've got 7 days to figure that out pronto. And within 24 hours, they backed down. Who's your daddy? Not only is Trump NATO's daddy, but apparently, as we all knew, Trump is Canada's daddy too. Welcome to the club. You sorry stepchild. So big SCOTUS rulings over Friday. And I did not post this on Friday because I wanted to go through a lot of the opinions. The biggest one everybody's talking about is birthright citizenship. That is big, but it's big for the reasons you probably didn't think about. Birthright citizenship was not determined, but let's get into that in a moment. First off, Trump specifically started picking people to be on the panel that was going to be the Affordable Care Act. And what they found out was they were going to start requiring preventative measures for cancer. The reason being is because if you find cancer early or you do preventative measures, it reduced the overall bill for Obamacare. Because again, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. However, the medical establishment community didn't like that. They would prefer to see you getting cancer so they can treat you with chemotherapy because that puts more money in their pocket. Trump didn't like that. Trump then worked with, of course, Bobby to put in appropriate people who said, you know what, we need to work on preventive medicine. The medical establishment didn't like that. They sued. Supreme Court ruled, nah. They can do that because guess what? That's in the Affordable Care Act, Obamacare. And guess what? You put it in there. Trump's allowed to pick the people in there. Tough kibbles. we're now going to work on preventative medicine and lower the cost of Medicaid. And you're going to lose out on all those cancer treatments because we all know you would rather see people get treated for cancer than actually preventing cancer. Love to see it. Explain that to me, liberals. Why is that so bad again? What? Bueller? Didn't think so. But think of the groomers. So people got sued because Texas and other states decided to prevent orange sites to be prolific everywhere and allow children to even get on them without sort of any validation. I believe it was the ACLU. The ACLU sued over this, stating that, but the First Amendment rights, we care so much about the First Amendment. Clarence Thomas, my man, came out and he totally wrote a fantastic opinion. This opinion does not do it justice. This is very narrow as far as what's put here. So this is what Thomas writes. First Amendment leaves undisturbed states' traditional power to prevent minors from accessing speech that is obscene from their perspective. The power includes the power to require proof of age before an individual can access such speech. It follows that no person, adult or child, has First Amendment right to access such speech without first submitting proof of age. I think he kind of equivocated adult and child a little bit. I wish he would have written more toward the ability of the parent to generate discretion for the child should be exposed to. After all, people, you don't allow a child to have access to alcohol or a car, right? Okay. You still can have restrictions on a child because they are a child. They're not of the age of consent. They're not a full-fledged adult. I wish they put more of that nature because that gives more credence to the adults to choose, the parents to choose what their child is being exposed to. Speaking of exposure, let's skip down to this one. Parents' rights. Children were being submitted to grooming materials, I believe it was Maryland, and it got shown that this is not good. Again, Amy Coney Barrett and Roberts are finally starting to find their cojones and realize that, you know what, we really shouldn't allow this happen to our kids. This needs to stop. So they basically stated, no, you can't force children whose parents say that's not kosher to expose your children to LGBTQ BS. I love, I believe it was Sotomayor's dissent. So check out the dissent. Critical to our nation's civic vitality and would sow chaos in public schools across the United States. An education and opportunity to practice living in our multicultural society will become a mere memory if children must be insulated from exposure to ideas and concepts that may conflict their parents' religious beliefs. So, again, you're saying that we're no longer going to understand what it means to be a multiculturalism? Excuse me, woman, but I do believe we're not going to be a majority white society in the next 20 years. So, again, because we're not going to be majority white, and we're definitely not a majority white global group, we're now all of a sudden going to forget that we're not. Look, I get it. You're all part of the DIBS and you're very much into race, but that does not have to deal with anything about a man is a man, a woman is a woman, and nature has had that way for millions of years, no matter which way you want to look at it, either secular or religious. It just doesn't make sense to go tutti frutti and give that stuff to the kids. Makes no sense. You can't justify it. Get your head out of your patootie. Now, who's the real based conservatives on the bench? So 6-3 order, all these have been 6-3, which is very interesting, but this is where it kind of showcases who the real conservatives are on the bench. There's been a fee that we've all been paying for decades. The fee provides funding to phone and internet services in libraries, rural areas, and schools. The FCC collects the money from telecommunications providers, which pass the cost to us, because again, taxes get passed on down to the lowest bidder in order to subsidize those services. Writing for the majority, Kagan says that no impermissible transfer of authority has occurred. Congress sufficiently guided and constrained the discretion that it lodged with the FCC to implement the Universal Services Contribution Scheme. So again, they know it's a scheme. I know scheme's not always bad, but it's a scheme to basically subsidize our internet for rural communities. Supposedly, I live in a rural community. I know several people in rural communities. They don't get anything free that I know of for this. Libraries, that's the predominant part, and schools. That budget should really come out of the Department of Education, where it should be coming from. This is just waste. That's what it is. It is pure and simple waste. And frankly, Gorsuch, Alito, and Thomas knew it was waste, saw it was waste, and tried to nip it in the bud. Those are the three base judges that really are the conservative ones that everybody should be rooting for. All right, I know. Hold on, hold your horses. Just one more, and then we're going to get into the big one. So Planned Parenthood evil got unplugged. So Planned Parenthood got sued because several states were like, you know what? Since abortion is now a state's decision, we're going to say we're not going to fund Planned Parenthood using that money since we don't agree with abortion. Planned Parenthood didn't like that, said, give me our money so we can kill babies, and they lost. Fantastic. So more states need to defund Planned Parenthood. If you don't know who Margaret Sanger is, and you support Planned Parenthood, you're supporting evil. You're a racist. Yep. Oh, I'm sorry. You're a racist. Go look it up, Margaret Sanger. All right, getting to the juice. So this is not what you think it is. I know Trump is jumping up and down for joy. This is not a huge, it is a big win. It is a huge win, but it is very, very narrow and has nothing to do with birthright citizenship. Sorry, it doesn't. Supreme Court 6-3 ruling, which is a surprise. This is a huge surprise, but the way that they ruled is not, because they did not rule on birthright citizenship. They didn't even touch it. They came nowhere near it. They're too scared. The justices for a long time have been neutered, and they're afraid to tackle serious issues other than, of course, abortion. That's been the big one that they finally tackled. And then, of course, with Kavanaugh being threatened, the Democrats refusing to provide protection for the justices, I think, frankly, some of them are compromised and scared. Like Amy Coney Barrett has a large family. Got a feeling that she's probably had threats. FBI probably has investigations into multiple people who have made threats against Amy Coney Barrett. She has a large family. I'm sure they're threatening the families of the justices, and it makes them nervous, so they're very scared to make serious rulings anymore. Instead, they very focus on a very, very tiny minutia on the case and then rule on that instead of ruling on what's called the merits. It's just something they have not done in a while because of the leaks that have been coming from the Supreme Court and from the threats from the left and from the Democrats refusing to provide protection services under the Biden administration for justices. That is hopefully changing. That has been coming up in the latest Congressional Assembly, and let's hope that they do start offering protection for all the justices, even the crazy DEI dumb ones. So, Coney Barrett, again, they did not rule on the policy to go in effect or nor address the policy violation of the Constitution, the policy being birthright citizenship. Instead, they focused on nationwide injunctions being issued by federal judges this year. They've been going on for a while. So, coming from what the opinion of a Barrett, here it goes. No one disputes that the executives have the duty to follow the law. Duh. But the judiciary does not have the unbridled authority to enforce this obligation. In fact, sometimes the law prohibits the judiciary from doing so, such as the Illegal Alien Act of 1798. I believe I've got that year right. Maybe it might be 92. Don't hate me on that, but you know what I'm talking about. The point is that specific act, as it was enacted, went above and beyond per Congress that the executive has carte blanche authority, like planetary authority, to declassify documents, that they can deport people who are here from a foreign nation that are not part of the U.S. and could potentially be pushing for an insurrection or carving off part of a country for its own devices. This act has been used multiple times, with some with very devastating effects during World War II. And now it's being utilized. But in the difference between World War II and now is that it was used on our own citizens and nobody lifted a finger, and they should have. Here, these people are not our citizens. They are not protected by our Constitution, and they should be ejected by a trebuchet. Let's continue on. In dissent, Sotomayor wrote, the majority ignores entirely whether the president's executive order is constitutional. She's not wrong, but she's no better, and only focuses on whether lower courts have the authority to hand down nationwide injunctions. She doesn't like this because, again, Kagan, Sotomayor, and KJ all want the injunctions, and we're going to get into proof of that. The order's patent unlawfulness reveals the gravity of the majority's error and underscores why equity supports universal injunctions as appropriate remedies in this kind of case. So again, Sotomayor is showing her ass that she believes in DEI and she believes in equity. Equity is not equality. Equity means that everybody, no matter how hard you apply yourself, gets the same amount. This is communistic rhetoric from the left. Sotomayor, KJ are DEI BSers. Kagan's not much better. She's a hypocrite, and we're going to expose her. So, KJ wrote her own dissent. So she didn't feel like Sotomayor and Kagan went far enough. She wrote her own, and she showed just how smooth her brain is. She is koala baby smooth. If you don't get that reference, go look up koalas. SCOTUS just gave Trump unbridled authority. This is from KJ. KJ believes, and I read all 98 pages of it. It's actually 119 pages. 98 pages are part of her dribble. I read that for you. That's part of the reason it took me till Monday to get through this. It was aggravating. But she claims that SCOTUS just gave Trump unbridled authority. No, they didn't. They said the judges in these district courts cannot do universal injunctions. It's not appropriate. It's not what they're designed to do. Federal courts are there to enforce the law. The fact that she believes federal courts are supposed to enforce the law shows she has no idea what the three branches of government are and what the executive branch is supposed to do. The legislative writes the law. The executive enforces the law. The judiciary interprets the law relative to the constitutionality of it. That's how it's supposed to work. The fact that she doesn't know that shows that she should be disbarred and kicked out. And frankly, whoever pushed her through, probably Harvard, needs to get their accreditation removed. She does not think that precedence matters. And we're going to get in why that's important, because in her dissent, and Amy Coney Barrett comes back and lambasts her over this, she does not believe that over 200 years of precedent should be acknowledged relative to her interpretation and ruling regarding district courts being able to do universal injunctions. Justices are impartial, the majority is not. So she believes she's impartial, even though all of her prior DEI stuff shows evidently differently. Amy Coney Barrett also calls this out in she rebukes this. She believes executive orders so this is the funny part. In her dissent, she believes that Donald Trump's executive order violates the 14th Amendment, but she gives no citations for it. She only says, well, it violates the 14th Amendment. Well, how so? She does not give any explanation for how it violates the 14th Amendment relative to birthright citizenship. Because if you look up why birthright citizenship was invoked, you would understand that it was done for a specific instance, for a specific reason, not for illegals jumping over and having babies. Go look it up. We'll get into that later. Let's just focus on what she wrote. Upset they didn't rule on the merits. Granted, I wish they did rule on the merits. Unfortunately, the justices aren't doing that right now, and there's a good reason why they haven't been doing it, but it's sad to see. Thinks there is nothing wrong with the courts ordering the executive branch. That's the real right there. She's upset that the executives are getting the ability to enact the law, and that the justices are not saying, hey, we should tell you how to run the country. That's what she wants. She wants the power to be able to run the country. This is showing her Mad Hatter BS exposed for all to see, that she is nuts. She is power hungry, and she has no idea what she's talking about. Courts should do more ordering of the country. Believes that violating judicial powers isn't violating the rule of law. This woman is absolutely bat-is crazy. Better to prevent actions even if they are constitutional. So in this case, she actually argued that it's better for district courts to block the executive authority and executive privilege to be able to enact a law, even if it's unconstitutional for them to do so, just in case it felt like it was the right thing to do. So even if the actions by district court judges are unconstitutional, it's still better that they do it to help potentially protect people. Rewind that, hear that again. I am not making this up, and it gets even better. It gets better. It gets more nuts. Believes in equal application of the law. This woman, is she a woman? I'm sorry, I'm not a biologist. Believes in equal application of the law, even though she believes that whitey should be kept under the thumb. I am not kidding. This woman believes in DEI. She believes in LGBTQ craziness, and she does not believe in parents' rights, but yet somehow she believes in equal application of the law. Her own hypocrisy is exposed for all to see. The emperor has no clothes. Then she goes on toward the end of it to insult the intelligence of the majority. She insults all of them, saying that they don't know what to talk about, that they're idiots. She believes the court should act unilaterally without a plaintiff. She believes that the SCOTUS should enact orders without a court case. Are you getting that? She believes that they should make up rules without an actual question of the law. I know. Mouthy, you're making this up. This can't be real. She believes that if Martians came down and saw this, they would be upset. Okay, Mouthy, you're totally making this up. No. 98 pages. I read it. Check this out. Right here. If a Martian arriving here from another planet would see these circumstances, would surely wonder, what good is the Constitution then? Those things Americans call constitutional rights seem hardly worth the paper they're written on. This is from her opinion. This woman is so psychotic, she believes creating a hypothetical of a Martian coming down and looking at the Constitution that is not protecting people would mean what is the real Constitution, and that's her validation of her opinion. This woman who used the Constitution to wipe her bunghole thinks that that's an argument. She does not care about the Constitution. This is the first time, in her opinion, she actually acknowledges that we live in a constitutional republic. So, again, it shows to just illustrate that this woman only cares about the Constitution, only cares that we're in a constitutional republic when it suits her. But on the other end of it, she believes that the judiciary should have full carte blanche authority to run the USA. I am not joking. She has those two diametrically opposed opinions in her dissent rattling around in her brain. The cognitive dissent of this woman just makes my brain hurt. Holy cow. So ABC read this, she saw it, and she wrote this blistering opinion. It's all over. Feel free to go look it up. I'm just going to highlight some of it right here. I read 119 pages of absolute horse donkey poopy, and I was not going to read any Coney Barrett's. I'll just let this summarization go through. From Annie Coney Barrett. The principal dissent focused on conventional legal terrain like the Judiciary Act of 1789 and our cases on equity. So what she's pointing out is that the 200 years of precedence, and not only that, Justice Jackson continues, and Kagan and Sotomayor for that matter, continues to use equity when it suits them. But then when it actually applies to law, they don't want to apply their own principles here. So pointing out that they're complete hypocrites. Justice Jackson, however, continues and chooses a startling line of attack that is tethered neither to sources nor any doctrine whatsoever. Pointing out earlier, she cites the 14th Amendment as why this is wrong for the executive order from Trump. However, she doesn't provide, there's no context. KJ is completely out of her mind. As best as we can tell, though, her argument is more extreme still because its logic does not depend on the entry of a universal injunction. Justice Jackson appears to believe that reasoning behind any court order demands universal adherence, at least where the executive is concerned. What? Did you catch that? She's pointing out that KJ literally just wants the courts to make decisions and the executive branch follow it. But just the executive branch, not applying the same principles across the plethora of different sectors, groups, demographics across the U.S. This woman, KJ, does not believe in equality. She believes in a thumb on the scales, equity perspective when it suits her. And it's nasty. And Amy Coney Barrett's finally calling her out on it. We do not dwell on Justice Jackson's argument, which is at odds with more than 200 centuries worth of precedent, not to mention the Constitution itself. We observe only this: Justice Jackson decries an imperial executive while embracing imperial judiciary. She said it very succinctly, better than I did. Justice Jackson would do well to heed her own admonishment Everyone from the president down is bound by law. That includes you, B. We observe only this. Justice Jackson decries an imperial executive while embracing an imperial judiciary. She continued that nobody disputes that executive has the duty to follow the law, but that the judiciary branch does not have unbridled authority to enforce this obligation. In fact, sometimes the law prohibits the judiciary from doing so. Getting back to the Illegal Alien or Illegal Aliens Act of 1798. Just, this hurts my brain how dumb KJ is. Kagan got exposed for being a lying hypocrite. In 2022, in a seminar at Northwestern, Kagan stated, this is on video, it just can't be right that one district judge can stop a nationwide policy in its tracks and leave it stopped for the years that it takes to go through the normal process. Do you understand what she just said? In 2022, when Biden was in charge, she said the district court judges should not issue universal injunctions because that's a violation. But now she disagrees with her own opinion. This just shows what I've known for years after reading Kagan's opinions, that she is a hypocritical POS that should not be on the bench. This woman is a farce, and she has just revealed blatantly for the entire public that if you read between the lines in her opinions, you could see now she exposes herself. Normally she tries to cover herself with legalese and jargon, but now this is carte blanche, showing face value. This woman is a horrible hypocrite. So again, it's okay for one administration to do it. It's not okay for the another administration to do it simply because you don't like their politics. This is what I would love to say to Clarence Thomas. Thomas, you're a good man. I've seen your opinions. You try so hard to be an originalist, so hard to not allow politics to come in. You other justices, you all need to look at this. Politics are in this system. It is time we fight back. I'm sorry. Drop the act. Politics are part of it. Man. So guys, that's all I have for today. My head is still whirling from the KJ stuff. It just makes me so aggravated having to read 100+ pages of her dribble. You don't believe me? Go read it yourself. Go by point. It's insane. Oh, she should not be on the bench. She is a DEI farce. Later, taters. Toodles.